You probably laced up your shoes this morning, walked to the kitchen, poured a cup of coffee, and sat back down within about 4 minutes. Maybe you told yourself you'd get some steps in later. Maybe you've been telling yourself that for a while now. And if you're over 50 or 60 or even 70, there's a real chance you've started to accept a quiet, creeping idea that your body is just winding down. That the stiffness in your hips when you stand up is just age. That the shortness of breath climbing stairs is just what happens. That the belly you can't seem to shift no matter what you try is just your metabolism slowing down the way it's supposed to. That's the lie I want to talk to you about today. Because that idea, that slow physical decline is inevitable for men past a certain age, is one of the most expensive beliefs you can hold. Expensive in terms of medication, in terms of lost mobility, in terms of years. And the fitness industry loves that belief. They sell you on gym memberships you won't use, protein powders with ingredients you can't pronounce, and recovery gadgets that cost $300 and sit in a closet after 6 weeks. None of that is what keeps older men genuinely lean, mobile, and sharp. What actually works is something so simple and so cheap that most men dismiss it before they even try it properly. Walking, but not the way you think. There's a specific way to walk, a specific structure to build around it, a specific time of day to do it, and a specific set of mistakes that turn a potentially life-changing habit into something that does almost nothing. And by the time this video is done, you're going to have a complete picture of exactly how to use walking as a tool to stay lean, maintain testosterone, protect your joints, sharpen your mind, and genuinely slow the biological clock. Not metaphorically, literally. There are now measurable markers for cellular aging, and walking done right moves those markers in the right direction. Let's start with the thing most men get completely wrong. If you've been walking for 30 minutes at a comfortable pace and wondering why nothing is changing, the answer is not that walking doesn't work. The answer is that comfortable walking at a flat pace for 30 minutes is not the stimulus your body needs to change. Your body is extraordinarily good at adapting. Once it figures out that a particular movement costs a predictable amount of energy, it gets more efficient at doing it. That's great for survival. It's not great for fitness. A 2019 analysis published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine looked at walking intensity in older adults and found that low-intensity walking, the kind most people do, produced significantly smaller improvements in cardiovascular fitness compared to walking that included intervals of higher effort. Not running, not jogging, just varying the intensity of walking itself. So what does that actually look like in practice? You'll walk briskly enough that holding a full conversation becomes slightly difficult for 60 to 90 seconds. Then you ease back to a comfortable pace for 2 minutes. Then you push again. That's it. That's the core mechanism. And it works because it forces your heart rate to climb and recover repeatedly, which is the same fundamental stress that makes cardio exercise effective at any age. The difference is that walking is low impact, which matters enormously once you're past 50. Your knees, your hips, your ankles, your lumbar spine, they all thank you for choosing walking over running. A 65-year-old man who has been sedentary for a decade has no business, starting with a running program. But that same man can start a structured walking routine tomorrow with zero equipment and zero risk of injury if he does it correctly. Now here's where it gets interesting, and this is the part most fitness content completely ignores. The time of day you walk matters more than most people realize, not because of some mystical circadian magic, but because of what's actually happening inside your body at different points of the day. A morning walk, ideally within an hour of waking and before eating, does something specific to your metabolic state. When you wake up, your glycogen stores from the previous day's meals are lower than they'll be at any other point. Your body is primed to pull from fat stores for fuel. A brisk 20 to 30-minute walk in that window, before breakfast, can shift your body into a fat-burning state faster than almost any other single intervention. Research from Northumbria University, published in the British Journal of Nutrition in 2013, found that men who walked before breakfast burned approximately 20% more fat than men who walked after eating. 20%, that's not a rounding error. But here's the second piece, and this one surprised me when I first came across it. An evening walk, specifically after dinner, does something completely different and equally valuable. It blunts the blood sugar spike that comes after eating. Your muscles, when they're active, absorb glucose directly from the bloodstream without needing insulin to do it. So a 15 to 20-minute walk after your evening meal can significantly reduce postprandial blood glucose, which is the blood sugar rise that happens after you eat. Over time, managing that spike consistently is one of the most important things an older man can do to protect his metabolic health. A study published in Diabetes Care in 2013 found that 3 15-minute walks after meals were more effective at controlling blood sugar over 24 hours than one 45-minute walk at a fixed time. 3 short walks beat one long one when timed correctly. So you now have 2 windows: morning before eating for fat metabolism, evening after dinner for blood sugar control. If you only do one, do the morning walk. If you can do both, you're operating at a level most men half your age aren't even close to. Now let's talk about what you're wearing on your feet, because this is where a lot of older men quietly sabotage themselves. The shoe industry has spent decades convincing you that more cushioning is better. Thicker soles, more arch support, more motion control. And for some people with specific structural issues, some of that makes sense. But for the average man who's been walking in heavily cushioned shoes for years, there's a real possibility that all that support has weakened the intrinsic muscles of the foot. These are the small muscles that run through the arch of your foot, the ones that are supposed to absorb impact, stabilize your ankle, and communicate ground feedback to your brain. When a shoe does all that work for you, those muscles get lazy. Weak feet lead to poor ankle stability, which leads to compensations in the knee, which leads to compensations in the hip, which eventually shows up as lower back pain. The whole chain is connected. You don't need to go barefoot. You don't need to buy minimalist shoes that cost $180. What you do need is to occasionally walk on natural surfaces: grass, packed dirt, gravel, sand if you're near a beach. Even 20 minutes a few times a week on an uneven natural surface wakes up those intrinsic foot muscles in a way that a flat sidewalk never will. An older man who walks on grass in his backyard for 10 minutes every morning is doing more for his ankle stability than someone who walks 5 miles on a treadmill in cushioned shoes every day. That's not an exaggeration. It's a mechanism. And while we're talking about surfaces, let's talk about hills, because this is the single most underused tool in any walking routine. Walking uphill is a different exercise than walking on flat ground. It recruits your glutes, your hamstrings, and your calves in a way that flat walking simply doesn't. For older men, the glutes are almost always the weakest link. Sitting for years shortens the hip flexors and shuts down the glutes. Weak glutes mean your lower back takes over for movements it wasn't designed to handle. And that's where chronic lower back pain comes from in most men over 50. It's not a disc problem in the majority of cases, it's a muscle activation problem. Walking uphill even for 5 to 10 minutes, as part of your daily walk begins to reactivate those glute muscles. You don't need a steep hill, a gentle incline. Something like a 2 to 4% grade is enough to shift the muscle recruitment pattern significantly. If you live somewhere completely flat, a treadmill with an incline setting works. Set it to 3% and walk at your normal pace. You'll feel the difference in your glutes within the first 2 minutes. Do that 3 times a week, and you'll start to notice that getting up from a chair feels easier, that your lower back feels less tight in the morning, and that your stride feels more powerful. These are not small changes, these are quality of life changes that compound over months. Let's talk about the arm swing, because most men look like they're trying to hold their arms still while they walk, and that's a mistake. A proper arm swing isn't cosmetic, it's functional. When your right leg steps forward, your left arm should swing forward in counterbalance. That rotation through the torso is what keeps your spine mobile and your core engaged during walking. Men who walk with stiff arms and no torso rotation are essentially walking with a locked spine. And a locked spine is one of the fastest ways to develop the kind of stiffness that people mistake for age. Your thoracic spine, the middle section of your back, is supposed to rotate. It's designed to rotate. When it stops rotating because you've been sitting at a desk or driving a car for 30 years, you start to look and move like an older man. Exaggerating your arm swings slightly, letting your hands come up toward chest height and swinging them across your midline just slightly reintroduces that rotation. It also increases your caloric burn by about 5 to 8%, which is not nothing over the course of a week. Now, here's something that almost nobody talks about in the context of walking for older men, and it connects directly to testosterone. There's a documented relationship between cortisol and testosterone. Cortisol is your primary stress hormone. When it's chronically elevated, testosterone production drops. This is well established in the endocrinology literature. Chronic stress, poor sleep, and sedentary behavior all contribute to chronically elevated cortisol. Exercise generally helps reduce cortisol, but the type of exercise matters. Long, intense workouts can actually spike cortisol in older men, which is one of the reasons that a 65-year-old man grinding through a 90-minute weightlifting session 5 days a week often ends up feeling worse, not better. Walking, particularly at a moderate pace in a natural outdoor environment, is one of the most effective cortisol-reducing activities documented in the research. A study from the University of Michigan published in 2019 found that spending 20 minutes walking in nature reduced cortisol levels measurably in participants. 20 minutes. Outside, that's it. Lower cortisol over time creates a more favorable hormonal environment for testosterone. It doesn't replace testosterone therapy if you genuinely need it, but it creates the conditions where your body's own production is less suppressed. For men in their 50s and 60s who are experiencing the early signs of low testosterone, fatigue, reduced motivation, difficulty maintaining muscle, increased belly fat, a structured daily walking routine is one of the first interventions worth trying before anything else. It costs nothing. It has no side effects. And it works through a documented mechanism. Let's talk about pace, because this is where specificity matters and most people are too vague. A genuinely effective walking pace for an older man should put you at roughly 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. Your maximum heart rate, as a rough estimate, is 220 minus your age. So if you're 60 years old, your estimated maximum is around 160 beats per minute. 60 to 70% of that is 96 to 112 beats per minute. That's your target zone during the brisk intervals. You don't need a heart rate monitor, though a basic one costs around $25 to $30 and is worth having. You can also use the talk test. If you can speak in full sentences with no effort, you're going too easy. If you can't get more than 3 or 4 words out, you're going too hard. You want to be somewhere in between, where you can talk, but it takes a little effort. The total distance matters less than the total time spent in that moderate effort zone. A man who walks for 40 minutes with 20 minutes of that at a brisk effort is getting more out of his walk than a man who walks for an hour at a leisurely stroll. That's the key shift in thinking. It's not about steps, it's not about distance, it's about stimulus. Your body responds to stimulus. Now I want to spend a few minutes on the mistakes, because there are 4 specific ones that I see older men make constantly, and each one quietly kills the effectiveness of the routine. The first mistake is inconsistency. Walking 3 times in 1 week and then nothing for 5 days doesn't build the adaptation you're looking for. The research is clear that the benefits of walking, particularly for cardiovascular health and metabolic function, require consistency over weeks and months. The minimum effective dose appears to be 5 days per week, not 7. You don't need to walk every single day. But 5 days is the threshold where the benefits start to compound meaningfully. 2 days off per week is fine. 3 or more days off and you're essentially starting over each week. The second mistake is ignoring hydration. An older man's thirst mechanism is less reliable than a younger man's. By the time you feel thirsty at 60, you're already somewhat dehydrated. Dehydration during walking increases perceived exertion, meaning the walk feels harder than it should, and it reduces the mental clarity benefits that walking is supposed to produce. Drink about 12 to 16 ounces of water before your morning walk. Carry water if you're going more than 30 minutes. This sounds obvious, but most men don't do it. The third mistake is walking in isolation without any strength component. Walking is excellent for cardiovascular health, metabolic health, and mental health, but it does not adequately load your muscles to prevent the age-related muscle loss called sarcopenia. Sarcopenia begins around age 30 and accelerates after 50. By age 60, a sedentary man can lose 3 to 5% of his muscle mass per decade. Walking slows this process but doesn't stop it. 2 to 3 days per week of basic resistance training, bodyweight squats, push-ups, resistance band rows, something that loads the muscle beyond what walking provides, is the complement that makes the walking routine complete. You don't need a gym. A $20 resistance band set from any sporting goods store is enough to start. The fourth mistake is walking the same route at the same pace every single day and wondering why results plateau. Your body adapts to repeated stimuli within about 4 to 6 weeks. After that, the same walk produces diminishing returns. You need to introduce variation. A longer route once a week, a hillier route twice a week, an interval session where you push hard for 60 seconds and recover for 2 minutes, repeated 6 to 8 times. Variation is what keeps the adaptation happening. This is also a good time to mention something about posture during your walk, because it affects everything from how many calories you burn to how your spine ages. Most men walk with their head slightly forward, their shoulders rounded, and their chest collapsed. This is the posture of someone who has spent years at a desk or behind a steering wheel. Walking in this posture doesn't fix it, it reinforces it. Before you start your walk, take 10 seconds to do this. Pull your shoulders back and down, like you're trying to put your shoulder blades in your back pockets. Lift your sternum slightly, tuck your chin so the back of your neck feels long. Now start walking. You'll feel immediately that your stride is more powerful and your breathing is easier. That's because when your thoracic spine is in extension instead of flexion, your lungs can expand more fully. Better breathing during walking means more oxygen delivery to working muscles and a lower perceived exertion at the same pace. You can walk farther and harder with less effort just by fixing your posture. That's not a small thing. Let me tell you about a pattern that shows up in populations of older men who remain physically vital well into their 70s and 80s. You see it in rural Japan, where older men walk to their fields every morning and back in the evening. You see it in parts of Sardinia, where older men walk hilly terrain daily as part of their regular routine, not as exercise but as transportation and social habit. You see it in certain communities in Greece and in parts of South Korea. These aren't men who go to gyms, they're not taking supplements, they're not following structured fitness programs, but they walk on varied terrain, they walk at a pace that requires some effort, they walk consistently, and the research that has examined these populations, including the Blue Zones research documented by Dan Buettner and published through National Geographic, consistently identifies daily walking as one of the few lifestyle behaviors shared across populations with exceptional longevity. This isn't proof that walking alone is the magic answer. These men also tend to eat differently, sleep better, and have stronger social connections, but walking is the one physical behavior that shows up in almost every high-longevity male population ever studied. That's worth paying attention to. Now let's talk about the mental component, because this is the part that often determines whether a man sticks with the routine or abandons it after 3 weeks. Walking, particularly outdoor walking, has a measurable effect on mood and cognitive function. A 2022 study published in Nature found that even a single 10-minute walk produced detectable improvements in mood and reduced anxiety in participants. The mechanism involves several things happening simultaneously. Physical movement increases blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, focus, and emotional regulation. Being outdoors exposes you to natural light, which helps regulate your circadian rhythm and supports melatonin production at night, which means better sleep. And the rhythmic bilateral nature of walking, left foot, left arm, right arm, has a calming effect on the nervous system that researchers are still fully mapping, but that has been observed consistently across multiple studies. For older men dealing with the mental fog that often accompanies low physical activity or the low-grade anxiety that comes with retirement, health concerns, or the general uncertainty of aging, a daily walking routine is one of the most evidence-backed non-pharmaceutical interventions available. It's not a replacement for mental health care if you need it, but it is a genuine tool with a real mechanism. Now I want to give you the actual structure, the complete routine, so you can start tomorrow. Day 1 through 5, Monday through Friday, you're going to do a morning walk before breakfast. Start with 20 minutes if you're currently sedentary. Work up to 30 to 40 minutes over the first 4 weeks. During that walk, for every 5 minutes, spend 90 seconds walking at a brisk pace where talking is slightly difficult, then recover at a comfortable pace for the remaining 3.5 minutes. Do that on a route that includes at least one mild incline, if possible. Focus on your posture before you start. Drink water before you leave the house. On 3 of those 5 mornings within an hour of finishing your walk, do 10 minutes of basic resistance work. This can be 3 sets of 10 bodyweight squats, 3 sets of as many push-ups as you can manage with good form, and 2 sets of 15 resistance band rows. That's it. That's the strength component. It takes 10 minutes and it addresses sarcopenia in a way that walking alone cannot. On 2 evenings per week, add a 15 to 20-minute post-dinner walk. This doesn't need to be intense. A comfortable pace is fine. The goal here is blood sugar management, not cardiovascular training. Walk within 30 minutes of finishing your meal for maximum effect. On the weekends, take one longer walk, 45 minutes to an hour at a comfortable pace. This is your recovery walk. No intervals, no intensity targets, just movement and time outside. Use this walk to explore a new route. Walk on grass or a trail if you have access to one, and let your mind wander. This is the walk that does the most for your cortisol and your mental state. That's the full routine. 5 morning walks, 2 evening walks, 1 long weekend walk. It costs nothing beyond a decent pair of shoes. It requires no equipment, no gym membership, and no special diet. It fits into a morning that probably already has 30 minutes of scrolling a phone or watching the news built into it. Now, if you want all of this laid out in a simple printable format, a day-by-day walking plan with the interval structure, the posture checklist, the hydration guidelines, and the strength add-ons, I've put together a PDF that covers the full 30-day version of this routine. It's structured as a daily log, so you can track your walks, note how you felt, and see your progress over the first month. You can find a link in the description below. It's the kind of thing you print once, stick on your fridge or your bathroom mirror, and actually use, not a sales pitch, just a convenient way to have the whole system in one place without having to rewatch this video every morning. Let me address something that some of you are probably thinking right now. You might be thinking that you have a bad knee or a hip replacement or some other physical limitation that makes this kind of routine impossible. And I want to be direct with you. If you have a specific medical condition that affects your ability to walk, you should be talking to a physical therapist or your doctor before starting any new routine. That's not a disclaimer, that's practical advice. A physical therapist can modify this routine in ways that account for your specific situation. What I can tell you is that walking is one of the lowest impact forms of exercise that exists, and in many cases, gentle walking actually aids in recovery from joint issues rather than worsening them. But if you have doubt, ask a professional, don't guess with your joints. For the majority of men watching this who are simply deconditioned, meaning they've been largely sedentary for years and have slowly accepted that as normal, there is no medical barrier to starting tomorrow. The discomfort you'll feel in the first week or two is your body waking up. It's not a signal to stop, it's a signal that the stimulus is working. There's one more thing I want to cover before I wrap up, and it's the deeper reason this kind of simple, practical information tends to get buried. The fitness industry makes money when you buy things. Supplements, equipment, memberships, programs, coaches, gadgets. A walking routine that you build yourself with no equipment and no ongoing cost is not profitable for anyone, so it doesn't get marketed, it doesn't get the glossy advertising, it doesn't show up in the magazines or the sponsored content. What gets pushed instead is complexity, because complexity creates dependency, and dependency creates customers. The idea that you need a sophisticated program to stay healthy as an older man is not supported by the research, it's supported by marketing. The men who age the best are almost never the ones who spent the most on their fitness. They're the ones who did simple things consistently for years. They walked, they moved, they slept, they ate food that wasn't complicated. They stayed connected to other people. None of that is a product. All of it is a practice. Starting tomorrow, you have everything you need to begin. Shoes on your feet, a route out your front door, 20 minutes before breakfast. That's the entry point. From there, the routine builds itself week by week. If you want to track it and have the full 30-day structure printed out in front of you, the PDF is in the description. It includes the interval timing, the posture cues, the strength add-ons, and a simple daily log. Print it out tonight and put it somewhere you'll see it in the morning. Now, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me how many days a week you're currently walking. Not how many you plan to walk, how many you actually walked last week. Be honest. That number is your starting point, and there's no judgment here. Everyone starts somewhere, and the man who walked 0 days last week and starts tomorrow is doing something more valuable than the man who talks about starting next month. If you want to go deeper on this topic, the next video covers the specific foods that support the kind of walking routine we talked about today. Not superfoods, not expensive supplements, ordinary groceries that cost less than $12 a week, and that directly support the hormonal and metabolic changes that walking is trying to create. It's the nutritional side of the same system, and it's worth watching back to back with this one. Stay consistent, keep it simple. And remember that the body you're living in right now is more capable of change than you've been told.